How are you guys all doing? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiaga, live today on May 23rd, 2024. I got another round of stories to get to you guys today. A lot of good discussion on today's episode, starting on more quarterback rankings, this time in the AFC East, going through all four of those and my reasonings behind where I have them ranked on my list. Then also we're going to talk about the Steelers starting their OTAs this week, the quarterback battle there between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, how both of them commented on it, and my thoughts overall on that quarterback battle. Then later on in the show, more OTA talk, this time around the Atlanta Falcons, on Raheem Morris, how he's sort of changing the culture there a little bit. What sort of things is he doing different than last year, and why I think it's a positive sign early on here for the Atlanta Falcons. That and much more. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. And on top of that, as a reminder before I start, if you guys have any questions or comments you want to make, please use the tip and donations link, GSMCPodcast.net. By using this link, I'll see your question pop up on my screen, and that way I can read your question or comment on the air and get your guys' perspective on anything I say or on either of the topics we discuss on today's episode. It's a massive help for this show, so please, if you guys could, use the tip and donations link with anything that you might want to say on today's show. But with that being said, we'll jump right into the AFC quarterback rankings on today's episode. Some new faces in there, some returning ones. So without further ado, I'll jump into the AFC quarterback rankings like I mentioned there. Starting at the number 4 spot, I have Jacoby Brissett. Now you might be wondering or asking, why is Jacoby Brissett there? Shouldn't Drake May be there? Well, technically, Jacoby Brissett is the starter at this point, and unlike a Caleb Williams or a Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams has already been named the starter. Jaden, by my understanding, hasn't been named the starter, but he is in line to start, drafting him at number 2 overall. And the main talk around Drake May and Jacoby Brissett is that Brissett is the bridge quarterback in place there for Drake May to learn as much as he can before really just throwing him to the wolves and having him learn the hard way. I like this approach by the Patriots, and Jacoby Brissett, I think, will do a decent job there for the Patriots. He is in his second stint there with the New England Patriots. He is 31 years old now, will be 32 halfway through the year, but that familiarity there around the organization with Gerard Mayo, they know the Patriot way, they know what it takes to have success there. Jacoby Brissett learning behind one of the best of all time in Tom Brady. His experience as well with different locker rooms, different teammates, I'm sure will help this young, inexperienced locker room in New England to do as best of a job that they can in this season. That takes me to my next point, the expectations and sort of the criteria I have made for these rankings of what the quarterbacks can sort of do with the level of talent that they have around them. The talent around Jacoby Brissett, not many people would label it as some of the best wide receiver groups, running backs that there are in the league. So really there aren't no real expectations that are on the shoulders of Jacoby Brissett to go out there and win a certain amount of games, win the division, or anything like that. It makes it a lot easier to just play freely. And then really, when you look at this team, any sort of positives that come will most likely be just surprises, a positive action that happens with this team. If they win a certain game that they're not supposed to, if they get to a certain amount of wins that nobody thought that they could, it's going to be looked at as a success. And this, just to remind everyone, is a long-term project in New England. I think Jacoby is the right person to start to usher in that new era, and then you could bring in Drake May along the way. Maybe at some point this year, maybe not, but right now Jacoby Brissett, because of all that I mentioned, is the number 4 ranked quarterback on that list. Moving on to number 3, Tua Tagovailoa, coming off of his best season in the NFL, his first full and healthy season for the Miami Dolphins. Finished the year last year at 11-6, had a good grasp on the AFC East Division title, but threw it away in the last couple of weeks there when they lost both times to the Buffalo Bills. So because of that, it made it even harder for them in the playoffs, having to travel to Kansas City, and that way really a big hurdle to jump over in your first playoff appearance for Tua. They really had no chance against the Chiefs, and it really just left a bad taste in everybody's mouths after that great season that Tua had individually as well as their team. If you look at Tua statistically, on top of the healthy season that he played, he backed it up with putting up some pretty impressive numbers. First in the NFL in yards, over 4,600 yards, 29 touchdowns, which was top 5, 14 interceptions, which he has to clean up, but he had a completion percentage of 69.3. That was top 3 in the NFL as well. So, great year in 2023 just gives you hopefully more confidence if you're the Miami Dolphins to sort of figure out a contract there with Tua. He has all the leverage really at this moment to point to these stats and to the just evidence that he can be that number one guy. It seems to be a mutual understanding there between the two of them. But in terms of just quarterback, what you'd want in a quarterback, he might not be the most elusive guy, the hardest guy to tackle one-on-one, but in this division, how he compares to the other ones, he's probably only second to one other guy, so that's something you could work with. Arm talent, it might not be the strongest arm in the division, but extremely precise, like I mentioned there, with the completion percentage. And the biggest point with Tua is just the level of talent and the expectations that are on his shoulders compared to Jacoby Brissett, who I just finished talking about. You have Tyreek, you have Jalen Waddle, you have a great running game as well. The defense isn't too shabby either. So now that you at least have gotten to the playoffs and you've shown everybody that you could stay healthy and perform at a high level, it is a start. It's not the sort of performance you'd want to put out there, but it is a start for this team, and now they have to continue it, and they have the responsibility to be in that playoff hunt each and every year, to validate to being the guy for them into the future. He stands in at number 3 for me on my quarterback rankings. He has room to grow. Good signs after last year, but for now, I don't think he supersedes this next guy I have on my list at number 2, being Aaron Rodgers. Hard to say Aaron just because, he didn't play at all last year. He played a total of 4 plays. If that, and he is coming off of that injury like I mentioned, how will he look? How will his mobility look? How will he look comfortability-wise just in the pocket, trying to elevate this New York Jets team to where everybody has had them in the last 2 years. Last year, they were Super Bowl favorites. He got hurt. That got thrown in the trash. Then this year, again, they're back in prime time for the majority of the first 12 weeks. So clearly the NFL has a vision for them, how he transitions into that starting role and how quickly he starts looking like Aaron Rodgers again will be a huge sign to see where this New York Jets team really goes. In terms of accomplishments, he beats out all the other guys in this division. He's made it to a Super Bowl. He's won one Super Bowl MVP, future Hall of Famer, multiple-time regular season MVP. So he has that all under his belt. But for right now, where he is in his career on the older side, he might not have the mobility, escapability that he had before, but still his brain and how he processes things and his arm talent for sure keep him up there among the league's best. But for right now, the expectations around this team are high. How he deals with that, how some of the younger guys deal with that will be a big sign as to how this New York Jets team looks towards November, December. Are they healthy, which is the most important part? And if they are they living up to those expectations that mostly fall on Aaron Rodgers' shoulders? He has acknowledged that, and he's really embracing it this season, so hopefully it all pans out well for the Jets, which means at number 1, I have, pretty obvious, Josh Allen as my number 1 ranked quarterback in this division. I think he's held that title for the last few years. He has been in that MVP conversation a little bit, has been ranked among the top quarterbacks in the NFL for a while now. But now this year is a little bit different, less talent around him, how he deals with that. And last year, it looked pretty rocky throughout the middle of the season. Then they made it into the playoffs and had a chance to beat the Chiefs as well at home, but they ended up losing on a freak play. Tyler Bass misses the kick, and they end up losing to the Chiefs yet again. So that isn't ideal, but he has shown that he's able, again, with less talent on his team, with a weird-looking roster, he is still able to compete with some of the best. His arm talent, physical ability is probably second to not very many people in the NFL. Maybe second to none, honestly, with how big he is and how well he moves. Extremely hard to tackle, can throw the ball out of the stadium, has the ideal build you'd want in a quarterback. But now, it is funny how now with less talent around him, with how Josh Allen is viewed around the NFL, you would think that with less talent, people would sort of give him a break. But it actually is the opposite for Josh, which comes with holding this mantle of being the top three, top four ranked quarterback in the NFL. With less talent now, teams or just people around the NFL will look at him now to, carry this team like a Patrick Mahomes could last year with no receivers, a pretty bad roster compared to what he did have in the past, but he goes and wins a Super Bowl. Lamar has never really had a number one ranked wide receiver close to what Stephon Diggs was for Josh Allen, and he has gone on to win multiple MVPs, has gone now to the AFC Championship game. So Josh Allen is a little bit unfairly judged there in some people's estimation because of the lack of talent, so much uncertainty on the Bills, but that's what comes with being the top guy for a number of years now in the NFL, not just in your division, but in the entire NFL. With less talent around him now, he'll have even more expectation, more judgment on his shoulders to try and emulate a little bit what Patrick, what Lamar, what other quarterbacks have done to carry their teams to the playoffs and even further than that. How he manages all of that, I think he's stepping more into a leadership role. He has all the tools to do it. He has developed since his rookie year to where he is now, has shown a great amount of growth since then. But how he deals with that, that's really what I'm most interested in seeing in 2024. But in terms of just these four quarterbacks, he does take the number one spot. And as always, I would love to know what you guys think of my list. Is the order right? Did you guys think it was harder for me to judge this week than or this episode than other episodes in the past? Leave it all in the live chat box or in the comments section afterwards. But we will move on with the rest of the show. We'll head to a quick break right now, and on the other side of it, we're going to talk about the Steelers' OTA quarterback battle that began on Tuesday, plus how Raheem Morris is sort of changing the culture a little bit now as the full-time head coach, what he's doing differently and how he's approaching some of these players at OTAs. Stick around to find out more on those stories. We'll be right back in just a few seconds.